economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.
If you do not understand racism, which is white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Confuse you. Confuse you. Confuse you. Confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. Confuse you.
My definition of white supremacy and racism, I use those two terms as synonyms. I use the same definition for both terms. That definition is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white.
Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.
Just because the term has been used so frequently. Neely Fuller Jr., in his word guide, 2 days in a row, I can read from the word guide. He writes, mixed blood, mixed race. Do not use this term. He has it underlined. When others use this term, ask them for a detailed explanation that you can easily understand. Ask questions. And then he gives questions that you can't ask. What exactly is mixed blood or mixed race? Is not all blood mixed? If so, mixed with what? If blood is not mixed, how can it be blood? What exactly is blood? What exactly is not blood? What exactly is a race? Now that is an important one. What exactly is not a race? What exactly is a mixed race? What exactly is not a mixed race? Is race and racism one and the same? If being a member of a race is not for the purpose of practicing racism, then what exactly is the constructive or destructive value in being a member of a race? And I'll stop there, but he gives more questions to ask. But the main point is, do not use the terms mixed blood, mixed race. And I know that part of the addendum is it suggests that there are multiple races. I know he has said repeatedly there's one race, the white race. The only reason for being a member of a race is to practice racism. What are your thoughts on hearing that? I don't know if you've read that passage before or have heard of Mr. Fuller's work, Azure. What I just read, did that make sense or seem logical? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I have not heard that before, but it does make sense to me. I think, I don't know, something that I think about a lot lately is how race isn't a biological thing. Like it alters people's appearance, or that's how people are classified based off their appearances. But we are all one. We're all one. And I liked what he said there about the only reason to be part of a race is to practice racism, or I guess for Black people to be part of Black people. Like Black people are classified as Black people in order for white people to enact racism on them. In the part where it says about mixed race and mixed blood, I think that I agree that everyone is mixed to a certain extent. Like there is very few people, very few people, there have to be people who are not part of, like, they're still in a small, secluded group that has not been touched by the outside society, for them to be one thing. Like, everyone is mixed up. We're all mixed up in a bunch of different ways. But I think, like, when, at least the way I've used the term mixed race, I'm not really saying, like, about mixed. I guess what I am saying about that is the fact that I have two different parents who are of two different races, and when you put that together, there becomes a mix of those two different races. Even though we are all one race and the blood has already been mixed, I can see, like, if you look at a picture of my family with my mom, dad, and me, there's a white person, there's a black person, and there's someone in the middle. And I guess it's hard for me to figure out another way to classify myself and other people who are, or who do have parents who are of two different races, other than saying that they are mixed.
I think I generally say on the program, yeah, I've been saying it for years. It's not sexy. It's not, you can't use it as like an Instagram handle or anything and get a bunch of followers, but it's accurate. It's logical. Non-white person with a white parent. I'm a non-white person. I have a white parent and a non-white parent. That's generally the way I say it. Or if I have to, because interracial, I don't use that term either for the same reasons, because it suggests that there's multiple races. There's not. There's one race. Interracial, as though, anyway. But I say I'm a white person, tragic arrangement with a white person. It's not sexy, it's not flashy. Sometimes it's a lot more to say, but it's simple, it's accurate, and I think it conveys everything that you are suggesting with the term mixed. Just something folks can think about.
What would you say?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
What would you say about people who have two parents, like, let's say one parent who's Asian and one parent who's black, and they want to acknowledge that they have both of that, but they can't say non-white person with a white parent because that's not true? What do you think they would refer to themselves as?
I have an Asian parent and a black parent, and in my view, that is, now we're getting somewhere. I say regularly on the program, it is the beginning of knowledge to call things by their proper term. If you have someone in the case that you just gave, they have a black parent and an Asian parent, and they say, well, I'm mixed race. And then you step forward and you have a white mom and a black dad, and you say, well, I'm mixed race. Now, how is that a category that is supposed to make sense? And then you have somebody else who will step forward and they'll say, well, I have a black dad and a Latino mom, and so I'm mixed. And it'll just go on and on and on, and that's supposed to be a category. What does that even mean? How did you saying, well, I'm mixed race? What have you even told me? Like, Mr. Fuller, he gives another example. He said the police, how they do the IDs. We got a mugger. We got a criminal. Be on the lookout. If someone called in and say, hey, Azure, we got a mixed race fella. Be on the lookout. Who are you going to grab?
Right.
Exactly. Come on. You're not even give me more specifics. Just, I got an Asian mom and a black dad. I got a white mom and a black dad. Now we're getting something there. Now I know what we're talking about. I got more details. Got it. Not mixed race.
Yeah. I hear that. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
The one term, white supremacy, is racism. And racism is white supremacy. And it doesn't deviate not 1 inch from that under any circumstance. Period. That's rock solid code. Otherwise everything is all up in the air. You have mass confusion, you deviate from that. No. There are three classifications of people racially on this planet. White, non-white, and white supremacists. Anything outside of that is suspect. Don't use it according to the code. Don't use any other classifications. And of course, when you say non-white, you mean black, because brown, red, yellow, beige, tan, they're the shades of black. Now, white supremacists, that's not only a white person, it's always a white person, a person classified as white and who functions as white, but a person that mistreats people directly, indirectly, in any area of activity based on color, based on a person being non-white, mistreats a non-white person. That's what a white supremacist is. But you have to be white in order to be a white supremacist. Now, why do I have those three categories of racial categories? Just three, not the 21 that I last heard about. That's supposed to be out here now. It might be even more since then. But it's white, non-white, and white supremacists. But the white supremacists are the only racists. They're only people who belong to a race. So if a white person says, I belong to the white race, it means you are automatically a white supremacist.
Okay.
Because race is racism.
Okay.
Black people are not members of a race. We ain't join any race. I mean, we were told that we were members of a race. Told by whom? By the white supremacists themselves. They told us this stuff.
Okay.
We ain't racing against nothing.
Who taught you, please, who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate, you should ask yourself who taught you to hate being what God gave you.
So, I guess kind of pivoting to what brought you to the book. Let's see, I'll read a little bit and we'll talk about how you got to making the interview. So this is from You Failed Us. And you write, I had to internalize a lot about racism and what white people thought of me because of how loudly the people in my group, in my program, talked about people in the general program. So her program's the gifted one. It was clear that they viewed themselves as superior, possibly because parents would praise them for being extra smart, possibly because they were white, in an ongoing joke that the kids in the general program were crazy, that the people in my class saw them as much different from themselves than the honors kids would say things about how loud, annoying, and drunk they were. At the time, I was aware that kids in the general program were black and honors kids were white, but I didn't connect the comments with the racial implications. I cannot say certainly that the comments were intentionally racist, but I also believe that racism was a factor. You can certainly share your thoughts about any portion of that paragraph, but it was the first sentence in particular, because when you were at Elliott Bay Books, you talked quite a bit about having to internalize racism in order to kind of fit in and find some sort of pseudo acceptance, at least with your white classmates. Can you talk about that specifically?
Yeah, definitely. To put it simply, I feel like I was forced to live as a different person than who I was the entire time I was in that program, because as a kid, I feel like most people can relate that as a kid, all you really want is to find acceptance. It's so important to feel like you're accepted. And since I was the only black kid in the room for like 8 out of 10 years, maybe there was one other couple years, but I was very much alone. And I would hear comments about people were very loud about the fact that I was different. People were aware of it. People made comments on it. And that made me feel like being different, having a different color skin was something wrong with me. It made me feel like this was something that was like a disadvantage for me. It felt like my identity was not something that I should love about myself because of the way it made my life.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other.
And I basically tried to like fake being white to gain that like the pseudo acceptance that you're talking about. I faked being white for a while, or tried to get as close to that as possible in order to find some acceptance from my peers, which just ended up with me being very confused about who I was, because even though I would try to fit in, it's very obvious to me, to everyone, that I wasn't white. Like, I knew that, and I just felt like I was trying to be someone who I very much wasn't.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other.
When you say you were kind of faking being a white person, like, can you give like specific examples? Like what behaviors does one have to engage in to fake being a white person?
I would definitely like observe what white students did, how they acted, and some things that I did. I feel like appearance was a huge thing for me, because I wanted to try to blend in. So I don't have my hair right now, but growing up I had curly hair. I have short hair now, but it was like long curly hair. I would very often straighten my hair. I would wear it in ways where you couldn't see that it was curly. I would even go as far to find my white mom's like concealer, her foundation, and like even put a light layer of that over my skin to try to lighten it a bit. I would see what brands of clothes the white kids wore and beg my mom if we could try to get me some of those clothes too. I also I wanted to figure out what the white kids were interested in. If they were interested in, like playing hand games at recess, like those silly like hand games, that's what I would do. If they were interested in certain books, that's what I would read. And it felt like all my interests weren't based off genuine interests of mine. They were based off things that I saw white people being interested in. And I felt like in order for me to fit in, I should also look a certain way and act a certain way, and just try to mimic the behavior that they have in order so that I didn't stand out as much.
Wow. Thank you so much for the clarification. Wow.
Codifying people, but you got to get rid of the system. See, that's what I mean by, as long as you have the system in place, the system is in place. You either have a prison system or you don't. And the system of white supremacy is a prison system for all people classified as non-white. All non-white people are in the system of white supremacy. They come under it. No one escapes that. if the white supremacists have classified you as non-white. A lot of non-white people classify themselves. Some of them will say that they are white, but that has to be validated by the white supremacists. I mean, they'll take a look at you and they'll say, oh, you got a whole lot of color in your skin, but it serves my purpose right now, for the sake of confusion, to classify you as white. I've actually seen that done, where a person who was classified as non-white have gone to another place, and the white supremacists just took one look at them and say, well, you're non-white, but for my purposes now, not for your purposes, for my purposes, I will reclassify you. I will reclassify you. Doesn't make any difference how you classify yourself. I'll reclassify you as white because I want to create some confusion here among the non-white people. That's my agenda. And you people always will adhere to my agenda. You don't have an agenda until I validate it. None of you. I don't care what you got or who you think you know, because you don't know any. If you don't know enough people who are white, you're in trouble. And if you're black and you're on this planet.
I am a black Egyptian. My father is much darker than I am. My mother is lighter than I am. In Egypt, people are identified by the religion first, not the race. So in Egypt, if you are Christian, you are a minority person. But if you're black, you're not a minority person. You are a part of the mainstream society. And I came from this background. And in Egypt, you identify as Arab and as Muslim. And in this country, when I first came, I identified myself as Arab American and Muslim first. And gradually, I became to identify myself as black. I came to the U.S. in 1978, and I became a U.S. citizen in 1985. When I became a U.S. resident, I was told by the Immigration and Naturalization that I am white. And I told them that I'm black, and they said, no, in this country, you are white. All Arabs in this country, all Arab immigrants are white. I didn't pay much attention in the beginning to this, because in the Arab world, we identify with our ethnicity first as Arabs, and then with the race second as black or white or whatever. But in this country, you identify with your racial group first and then with your ethnicity second. Gradually, I became black first and Arab second. And I rejected my white classification publicly for the first time in 1987, in February, as a panelist in a function sponsored by the Association of the Study of Black Life and History in Detroit. I said that I belong to two minority groups. I am Arab American and Black American, and I'm racially black and ethnically Egyptian. I was harassed by my employer right after that. I work for a white school district. The superintendent is white. All the associate superintendents are white, even though that we provide services to 30% black population. But the organization is white and the approach is very white. The attitude towards me changed completely after I went out publicly and rejected my white classification. One coworker came to me and told me, a white coworker came to me and told me right after the function that he met with the superintendent, and if I don't keep my mouth shut, my educational career is over. He said, you have nothing to do with these people, you have a history and a culture. These people came from the jungle, you have nothing to do with them. These people lie and steal. When I see one of them in my neighborhood, I call the police. And I was told by the director of general education, who is retired now, in '88, I was told by him that I get people angry when I say that I'm black Egyptian. If I just say that I'm Egyptian, I would get along. I have to add that I was denied promotion twice because I chose black classification. This is part of my 2 lawsuits against my employer, which are currently pending, 2 lawsuits.
Now, just for the education of our viewership, why don't you share with us a breakdown of Egypt as it is today, insofar as blacks or combinations thereof of European descent and what have you?
We don't have Egyptians of European descent in Egypt. We have a population which is basically which is basically a mixture of ancient Egyptian blacks who intermarried with Arabs right after the Arab conquest. The ancient Egyptian population was brown and black before the Arab conquest. But before the Arab conquest came the Greeks. The ancient Egyptian population was in Egypt for thousands of years The ancient Egyptian population was brown and black, and the Greeks came in 300 BC, and they started to intermarry with the local population, and then the Romans came and ruled from 70 BC until they were conquered by the Arabs and kicked out by the Arabs in the 7th century. And these people intermarried with the Egyptian Copts, and they made the pigmentation of the Egyptians, the Copts, much lighter because of this intermarriage with Europeans.
Now, you're an educator, okay? Now, how do you deal with situations when you practice your profession insofar as dealing with the mythology or the misconceptions about Egypt being a white civilization? How do you deal with that?
This is a big problem because Egypt, the ancient Egyptian civilization was a black civilization, and ancient Egyptians were black according to the Greek scholars and the Roman scholars. Ancient Egypt became white only in the 19th century and in the 20th century. And the scholar who is responsible for this is Seligman, the noted anthropologist from England, Seligman. White supremacy argues that blacks are inferior than white intellectually. They are subhuman and they are incapable of building a civilization. White supremacy had one dilemma until Seligman came. The dilemma was ancient Egypt was black according to the Greek and the Roman scholars. 10 of them said that, including Aristotle and Plato. 10 of them said that in writing. They had this dilemma. Ancient Egyptian was black. So if blacks are inferior intellectually and are incapable of building a civilization, how come the ancient Egyptians built a civilization? Seligman found the solution for this dilemma. He came up with a theory called the Hamite theory. He separated the blacks who built a civilization in Egypt and Ethiopia from the rest of the black race, and he called them brown-skinned whites, or the Hamites. So Seligman saved white supremacy from this dilemma, and all the white scholars followed him from that time on. This was at the end of the 19th century. And since that time, white scholarship says that ancient Egypt is white.
Mustafa Hefni is currently working on his doctorate degree at Wayne State University. His dissertation topic is a content analysis of the treatment of ancient Egypt in world history textbooks. And just how far is this determined Egyptian willing to go to be classified black?
I want to carry my case all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary.
A lot of non-white people classify themselves. Some of them will say that they are white, but that has to be validated by the white supremacists. I mean, they'll take a look at you and they'll say, oh, you got a whole lot of color in your skin, but it serves my purpose right now, for the sake of confusion, to classify you as white. I've actually seen that done, where a person who was classified as non-white have gone to another place, and the white supremacists just took one look at them and say, well, you're non-white, but for my purposes now, not for your purposes, for my purposes, I will reclassify you. I will reclassify you. Doesn't make any difference how you classify yourself. I'll reclassify you as white because I want to create some confusion here among the non-white people. That's my agenda. And you people always will adhere to my agenda. You don't have an agenda until I validate it. None of you. I don't care what you got or who you think you know. Because you don't know it. If you don't know enough people who are white, you're in trouble. And if you're black and you're on this planet.
I come from a long line of New York Jews. I grew up in a world with synagogue, Hebrew school, bar mitzvahs. So it never occurred to me that I was passing. I wasn't pretending to be something I wasn't. I actually grew up believing I was white.
Show us how you can stand on your side. Oh, that's terrific. How do you do that?
We lived almost picture-perfect kind of life for a while. So when Lacey decided she was going to tell the story, I was a little nervous about it.
If you look too closely at it, it didn't make any sense. So we found ways to see what we wanted to believe.
I always looked at you like you looked black. To me, you're just like a Jewish kid who, I don't know.
White people will think anything. Crazy things. I'll know white people for a long time.
Today's the day. We did it.
It really is the power of denial. How the hell did anybody sort of not acknowledge this?
It just seems like the 600-pound gorilla in the room to kind of just refuse to see it.
When it came time to apply to college, I had to check a box. The only box I had ever known was white, so I just didn't check anything. And based off a photograph, I was admitted to college as a black student. And I was afraid of not being a part of the world that I had grown up in anymore.
If I could have done my life differently, there were a lot of things I would have done differently, but in the end, not really.
You know, the fact is, like, whatever happened with you and Daddy, and that inability to talk about things, that is what I carry on. Nobody talked about everything because it was all secrets.
Number 4? Okay. Number 4 is racial sexual confusion.
Wow.
So now you got trans this and trans that and trans that. Then you mix that transgender confusion with trans-racial confusion. Now you got the package that you was aiming for in the beginning.
Yeah.
See what I mean? They started off with transgender, but I've been telling people for years, oh yeah, that looks like that's mundane. That's, you know, we all have people who are, you know, what you call bisexual or trisexual. Even among black people, we all got them in our family if we're not those ourselves, okay? So we say, well, that's no big deal, but you got to think about what the racists intend to do with that. So they mix the transgender with the transracial.
Wow.
See, now they got maximum confusion, which is what they want.
Dolezal. She is out at the NAACP and on TV, of course. Appearing on NBC's Today Show, Dolezal, who is white by most definitions, says she considers herself black and takes issue with critics comparing her look to blackface.
Are you an African-American woman?
I identify as black.
You identify as black. Let me put a picture up of you in your early 20s, though. And when you see this picture, is this an African-American woman? Or is that a Caucasian woman?
That's not in my early 20s, but...
That's a little younger, I guess? Yeah.
I got 16 in that picture.
Is she a Caucasian woman or an African-American woman?
I would say that visibly she would be identified as white by people who see her.
But at the time, were you identifying yourself as African-American?
In that picture, during that time, no.
What a fascinating conversation. I mean, this is mind-blowing and, of course, provocative stuff. Isn't it interesting, Chris, who's giving me the hairy eyeball, to live in a time when people are identifying themselves? I think of Bruce Jenner with transgendered issues and now her with transracial issues, as she calls them.
I think they're very different.
I mean, but listen, they identify themselves as different than as we see them. That's an interesting
proposition. This is the first time that we've heard her say that, because I don't know that to be true. I'd like to know more about that, because to a lot of people, it's as though she's just appropriating a lifestyle, a culture, a racial identity. And the fact is, she's told a lot of lies about other things that we've heard about her family.
Bruce was dealing with something very openly as a man that he didn't feel he wanted. He wanted to be different. He wanted to be something else. This is about subterfuge and hiding and dancing around it by saying, well, it was the press accounts that said I was trans race, whatever that means,
I mean,
then it went black.
Or is it just that we're more accustomed to what Bruce has gone through than we've never seen anything
Clearly,
like
this is a young
before.
woman who is struggling with identity, and it does make me terribly sad that she is struggling with that, and I hope she finds some answers for herself.
Fascinating and interesting are other words for bizarre and strange. And somebody who wants to be something is open about that. It doesn't come only out when they're caught. That's a part of the dynamic here.
Maybe, but I mean, this is the first time we've heard her speak, so it's, I think, very interesting to hear her rationale for all of it.
I don't know that we actually heard it. She
Yeah,
just
that's a
says
good
it's
point.
complex. I think complex is getting out of the situation.
What do you think?
What
We
do
would
you
love
think?
to hear your thoughts on this. You can find us all on Twitter.
A lot of non-white people classify themselves. Some of them will say that they are white, but that has to be validated by the white supremacists. I mean, they'll take a look at you and they'll say, "Oh, you got a whole lot of color in your skin, but it serves my purpose right now, for the sake of confusion, to classify you as white." I've actually seen that done, where a person who was classified as non-white have gone to another place, and the white supremacists just took one look at them and say, "Well, you're non-white, but for my purposes now, not for your purposes, for my purposes, I will reclassify you. I will reclassify you." Doesn't make any difference how you classify yourself. I'll reclassify you as white because I want to create some confusion here among the non-white people. That's my agenda. And you people always will adhere to my agenda. You don't have an agenda until I validate it. None of you. I don't care what you got or who you think you know. Because you don't know it. If you don't know enough people who are white, you're in trouble. And if you're black and you're on this planet.
Why do you feel you have to pass for someone with 20/20 vision when you're blind as a bat?
I don't feel I have to pass.
Yes, you do. It's a sickness in your brain, just like if you were trying to pass for white.
You mean I'm not white?
Oh, sit down.
This is a scandal. What do you mean I'm not white? Why didn't you tell me this before? You're my own sister.
Down, Wally.
Goodness gracious, do you know a lot of adjustments have to be made? I have to cancel the swimming lessons. What are the guys at the club going to say? I'm not white. Oh, it feels like it. Ah! Goodness gracious, sis, you're right.
Lord, help me.
Does Dad know?
Did you ever wish you were white?
Yeah, I did. I was growing up in Mississippi, and it's the kind of thing that I hesitate to say because when you say it, all the black groups call you and say, "How dare you say it?" But yes, I did. And I did now, I understand, not because, white is better, but because in my mind then, white kids were loved more, they received more, their parents were nicer to them. And so I wanted that kind of life. I wanted to be one of the Kool-Aid kids.
With a lot of the people that lives out here, you probably wouldn't take them to be black people. You might not look black, but you got the black blood into you. Well, my name is Roberta Jeanette Euler, but I go by Bert for a nickname. I've lived here all my life. On my job that I had worked at, they took me to be white. And my best friend, she took me to be white. She was shocked when I told her I'm not white. I am black. I am a black person. And it was, well, you're not that. You think you are. No, I know I am. I was raised that way. But I was also raised, as Mom would say, it doesn't matter what color your skin is. We all serve one God. Now, as you know, this is my home. Over here is my daughter's home, Jessica. Everybody else in here, we're all kinfolks. That's how this community got to be mixed with white and black. It was from the black children. Our children going out marrying white and bringing them in. A lot of them was as light as I am, but we still said we were black. And then we had some real dark ones, but that's okay. They were black, we were black. So that's how this all got started. My grandma, she was half Turk, half black. My grandpa was a white man. My mom registered me as black. My mom she wasn't as fair complected as I am. She was a light tan brown. My dad, he has German, Irish, white. Well, his mother was a white woman. His dad was a colored man. And then as I grew older and I got married and I had my children, I registered my children as black.
I have found that stone that was here down the mountain.
Most of them in this area goes as black. We've got maybe 2, 3 families that considers themselves being white. But the rest of us in here, we consider ourselves being black.
You know this country is prejudiced, always have been, and it never will grow out of it. I was in the service in '66. I circled black, Negro. He said, you can't circle that. I said, that's what I am. Well, he kind of smiled, and he said, circle this. I said, okay, which meant Caucasian. I didn't show my collar, but I know what I was. And I ain't gonna tell you my race. My mom raised me as Negroes. Oh, I had a lot of people ask me, say, why did your mom raise you as a Negro? I said, that's what I am. They said, yeah, but you don't show it. I said, it's gonna come a time where white won't accept you and the Negroes will accept you. I said, I'll wait it out. That's about all you can do.
He'll shout the victories, and he'll break through the blues. Yes, yes. Some golden day break for me and for you.
Amen.
Growing up, I was always taught that I was black. I started into school and didn't really think much about it until I got into the elementary. I'm going to say around about 3rd or 4th grade. That's when I started noticing a difference. I started noticing I was being taught that I was black, but I didn't look black. Other children didn't view me as black. Even some of those other kids made fun of me because, why are you saying you're black when you're white? It wasn't until I reached about junior high and then I realized I'm white. That is what I am. Yes, I know I was raised black and was told I was black, but I am white. What black person has blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair complected and can hardly tan besides burning? I'm white.
You don't have to look black to be black. I know she don't look black, but she has got black in her. She's right. She's got a lot of different kind in her. But I am her mother. I stand on the black. She did not stand. Only for so long of a time she stood as for black. When she got into school, into Waverly School, she let the people in Waverly change her thinking, her feeling. I didn't. I still stood for what I was, what my mother told me I was. I didn't care what I had to go through. I still stood for it.
When I finally made the decision to go as white, I did feel guilty about it. It did, in a way, break my heart. It's nothing against my family, and it doesn't mean that I don't like black people or love black people or care for black people. I do. And like I told her, I can't be racist, and I know that, and I would never want to be, even if I chose to be. I couldn't. I don't want that for myself or for my children.
You're never going to get to the top of that mountain, I'm telling you. The black blood in you is going to stay there. And whether you want to accept it or not, there is going to be people to pick it out of you, whether you mention East Jackson or not. I went to a doctor in Waverly a couple good years back, and on that application, it asked my race, and I put black. The woman come out and said to me, "How can you be black?" And I kind of stared at her because she throwed me off. She said, I have never seen a black person, fair complected, blue eyes, freckles, and red hair. I said, well, surprise, you see her now. And she wanted to change my race. She was aiming on marking out the black and putting white. And I told her, don't you do that. I know what I go by. I know what I am. You leave it there. I will never, ever deny my race for what my mother had brought me up and raised me and had put me as. I will always be that until the day I leave this earth.
Wow. Thank you so much for the clarification. Wow.
Just because the term has been used so frequently. Neely Fuller Jr. in his word guide, 2 days in a row, I can read from the word guide. He writes, mixed blood, mixed race. Do not use this term. He has it underlined. When others use this term, ask them for a detailed explanation that you can easily understand. Ask questions. And then he gives questions that you can't ask. What exactly is mixed blood or mixed race? Is not all blood mixed? If so, mixed with what? If blood is not mixed, how can it be blood? What exactly is blood? What exactly is not blood? What exactly is a race? Now that is an important one. What exactly is not a race? What exactly is a mixed race? What exactly is not a mixed race? Is race and racism one and the same? If being a member of a race is not for the purpose of practicing racism, then what exactly is the constructive or destructive value in being a member of a race? And I'll stop there, but he gives more questions to ask. But the main point is, do not use the terms mixed blood, mixed race. And I know that part of the addendum is it suggests that there are multiple races. I know he has said repeatedly there's one race, the white race. The only reason for being a member of a race is to practice racism.
You are now listening to P.A.R. That's People Activity Radio. And I'm your host, JohnGHorse. Welcome. You have found your family in a peaceful place. PAR aims to be a family-friendly information distribution program seeking to inform non-white people, in particular black classifieds, and assist in counter-racist codification. The title of today's episode is Organized Deception, Racial Classification, Confusion, and the Multiracial Mixed Illusion. Let's get it in. Today's topic on the surface will appear to be extremely complicated by design. And before I even begin to try to unpack a designed, deceptive, complicated topic, I'm always pressed to say that we are looking at this topic under the context of racism and white supremacy, and racism is white supremacy. We lean heavily on the Honorable Elder Neely Fuller Jr., who has provided us with a constructive anti-racist codification, code book, word guide. And we can use these codes and words to unpack or remove the confusion when we are talking about subjects like race under the context of racism, white supremacy. Neely Fuller Jr. says, there is only one race. He said, and you should not deviate from that code. What do you mean, JohnGHorse, there is only one race? That don't make no sense. Of course it doesn't make any sense. That's the design. Organized deception. Anytime you're talking about the topic of race in or under the context of racism and white supremacy, you are going to enter a whirlwind. You are going to enter a tornado. You are going to enter a hurricane of whirling dervish confusion by design. The only people that do the classifying are people who classify themselves as white, and we believe in racism and white supremacy. And in an attempt to practice counter-racist thought, speech, and action, I am going to repeat the title of today's episode: Organized Deception, Racial Classification Confusion, and the Multiracial Mixed Illusion. What do you mean, JohnGHorse? Multiracial mixed illusion. Well, we are going to unpack organized deception by the usual suspects in systematic anti-blackness, or as Dr. Kamal Cambone calls it, white terror domination, or as the elder Neely Fuller called it, racism and white supremacy. What it means, what it is, and how it works. And I am going to lean heavily on an article written by the Orlando Sentinel. And the title of the article is Suspicion of Negro Blood Racked Family Lake County Racial Case Captured National Attention. One more time, the title of the article is Suspicion of Negro Blood Racked Family Lake County Racial Case Captured National Attention. That's a very interesting title. Again, this is an article written by Steve Berry of the Sentinel staff of the Orlando Sentinel. Not going to read the whole article. It was written in February 10, 1991, but I'm going to read a significant amount of the beginning of the article just to give us a palette to unpack racial classification confusion. And here we go. Alan Platt never did go along with integrating the races when his children were small. My dad always said blacks had their place, the 83-year-old Platt said. Like most whites in the 1950s, he firmly believed that. But in October 1954, Lake County Sheriff Willis McCall, the staunch sentinel of all racial barriers, came to Platt's Mount Dora home. People had been complaining about his children, McCall said. The Platt family skin was too dark, their hair too curly. McCall was convinced that they had Negro blood. Back then, just a tiny fraction determined whether you could be accepted into white society. 1/8 black, and you were out. 1/16, and you were in. That was the law. So McCall told Platt he should keep his children out, that he should not send his 5 youngsters back to the white Mount Dora school until the race of his children was settled. During the next 11 months, the sheriff, school board attorneys, the governor, and the FBI launched investigations to determine the composition of the fruit pickers' bloodline. Platt said he was Cherokee Indian and Irish, not black, and he fought back. Eventually, he won in court. But the case disrupted the county's tranquility. For the Platts, the case brought night riders to their home. Night riders is white supremacists, most likely Klan members, just another term for anti-black terrorists. But I digress. Let me get back to the article. For the Platts, the case brought night riders to their homes, threats, and at least one attempt to burn them out. To this day, Platt's children refuse to discuss the case, Platt said. For another local Indian family, the case brought the Ku Klux Klan to their doorstep and a warning to get out of town, a warning they heeded. For all of Lake County, it brought national notoriety as one of the hotbeds of racial violence. Still, the case changed many people's racial attitudes. Even Platt, who had once vowed that he would not send his children to school at all if he had to send them to a Negro school, concedes he had more respect for blacks after his ordeal. That's interesting. Countywide, many white people for the first time seriously questioned segregation. I suspect that's not true. This is me talking. This is in the article. I'm reading the article, and that's a bunch of mess. But I'm going to read that line one more time. I'm sorry, family. I couldn't help that one. But countywide, many people for the first time seriously questioned segregation, an institution they had accepted without thought. That segregation was wrong, never occurred to us, said Linda O'Connor, a Estes High School cheerleader and prom queen at the time. We were more interested in our Peugeot shoes and whether to roll our jeans into 3 cuffs or 4 cuffs. That case probably was the first time any of us really thought about things like that. Family, so I'm sorry, I can't do it. I'm done. You mean to tell me people in a stomp down white supremacist town ain't thinking about practicing racism, white supremacy? Stop it. But I needed to read the beginning of this article to get to unpacking what we're talking about when we're talking about race. And I'm going to go to the counter-racist thought, speech, and action. I'm going to go to the word guide. I'm going to go to Neely Fuller's counter-racist logic. Neely Fuller says, under the context of racism and white supremacy, there is only one race and there are 3 categories. And he says those categories are the white supremacists, people who classify themselves as white, that's number 2, and the last, non-white people. And that last category is designated mistreatment folks, meaning when you are non-white, you are going to get mistreatment in all areas of people activity. You understand me? People activity, if you don't know what that is, if you listen to my introduction, Neely Fuller speaks about the 9 areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, religion, sex, and war. Whoa. And I forgot about politics. I'm sorry. That'll be 9. But I digress. So under that understanding, what does it mean to be white? And how do we know the difference between white people, people who classify themselves as white, and those people who classify themselves as white and believe in white supremacy? Because those are 2 categories in the 3 categories. Everybody else is designated for mistreatment, non-white. In this particular case, we are talking about the family in Orlando, the Platt family. And if you look at the thumbnail of my video article, you will see the Platt family's images to give you a reference point on what I'm talking about. To me, they look like white folks. But white folks said they weren't white folks. A sizable amount of people in, Mount Dora County. Hold on, I got to get the correct. Mount Dora, Lake County. Okay, a sizable amount of Lake County white residents say, hey, man, you know what? Them noses a little bit too wide, that hair a little bit too curly, skin got a little bit too much color in it. Now, far as the Platt family was concerned, they was white. But under the context of racism and white supremacy, the white supremacists do the classifying. And in this case, it was Lake County Sheriff Willis McCall who launched an investigation on whether the Platt family was indeed, as they put it in the title, Negras. You understand me? So, under this this racist white supremacist logic, there is no real litmus on whiteness. It's basically the white supremacist in the environment that you find yourself in makes the determination based upon, does it assist them in racism, white supremacy to make say that you're white, or does it make more sense to say that you're non-white? It's whatever they say. As the brother filmmaker Tariq Nasheed says all the time, they practice the I'm white and I say so. So now let's superimpose ourselves on today when we have doggone near 40 racial classifications, and we can go down the line. Latino, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, Arab, Caribbean Islander. I mean, you can go on, and Jewish, Irish. You can go on and on and on about all these ethnicities and classification. But at the end of the day, under the system of racism, white supremacy, counter-racist logic tells us that there are only 3 categories. Neely Fuller says they started out with 3 categories, and I believe those 3 categories was white, mulatto, and black or Negro. Now, in an effort to refine the system of racism, white supremacy, because you had an influx of immigrants from around the globe in the United States of America, and you had to navigate the system of racism, white supremacy based on systematic anti-blackness, or as the brother Kamal Cambone says, white terror domination. The white supremacists in charge, and we suspect the white supremacists in charge, said it would better refine, it would better serve the system of racism, white supremacy if we add all these categories. And what these categories do is create confusion. So you will have a person that may be from the Pacific Islands or a place like Hawaii. You have a person that may be from the Pacific Islands from a place called Tonga. You may have a person from the Pacific Islands in a place called Samoa. And in the first stages of the early beginnings of racism, white supremacy, he only had 3 categories: white, mulatto, and Negro. A lot of people was being put into the Negro category. I'm just telling you right now. Hawaiians, Filipinos, Mexicans, Cubans, Puerto Ricans, everybody was being thrown in the Negro category. So in order to incentivize being accepted into whiteness, what you have is economic survival incentive. If you are a young man or a young woman that may be of light complexion, you may want to get with a mate that is your complexion or lighter, so that you can breed out the color of your offspring, and you will be able to marry up and reproduce up. There are terms that certain Central American, South American, and Caribbean Islander cultures use to identify this anti-black buffer class that might not necessarily be white, but they are on their way to whiteness. And in this case, you had the Platt family, who claimed Cherokee heritage along with Irish heritage in Florida territory. If you know anything about the Irish, they were incentivized to come down to Florida to assist the federal government in racially dislocating non-white Native Americans, Black Indians, Seminoles, Maroons, whatever you want to call it. People who will be classified as white today were terrorized by a lot of these immigrants that were given gun, free land, and free reign. If you can take it, as yours, as it pertains to Florida territories. And there's a large community of people who identify with being Florida crackers that we will address in a later episode, but I just wanted to put that out there. So they were claiming Irish ethnic background, and I'm talking about the Platt family who was kicked out of the school, and they were claiming Cherokee heritage. Now, if you know anything about the Cherokee Nation, the Cherokee Nation is a Confederate Native American tribe. When I say it's a Confederate Native American tribe, they fought for the Confederacy to maintain slavery. They were the last platoon to lay down arms. They were the last platoon to surrender when the North declared victory over the South. They were led by a chief by the name of Stan Watie. If you look at Stan Watie, he's one of these individuals that was very light, bright, and darn near white. Now, if you know anything else about the Cherokee Nation, it is the largest nation of Native Americans, the most wealthiest nation of Native Americans in the United States of America, and they are known for kicking out, removing, exiling all members of the Cherokee Nation that had color or could be identified as Negro and or black. They are believe also have been found they lost a case against the black Cherokee citizens, and I believe they are right now, I could be in error, supposed to be reimbursing and allowing black Cherokee citizens to get some of them tangibles that they receive by way of reparations, land, and other tangibles that are given to the 5 civilized tribes. But I'm not going to get into the 5 civilized tribes. I did a whole episode on the Native American illusion, racial classification confusion. Feel free to look at my platform. And family, I never say this, and my family always tell me, when you're doing your show, always remember to remind your listeners, hey, if you like the content, if you think it's constructive, subscribe and press the thumb up button. Much appreciated. And let's get back to the work. And I've said all that to say this. I'm not going to be here all night, family. I read the article just to give you a little palette so that I can lean on, so that you can understand where I'm coming from. The white supremacists are the one who do the classifying. You can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, but at the end of the day, the people in charge classify themselves as white and believe in racism and white supremacy. And the only way we are going to stop this insane square dance that we're playing with each other, the only way that we are going to stop this mistreatment, the only way that we are going to stop this terror dominates, this systematic anti-blackness, this racism and white supremacy, is we're going to have to start addressing it for what it is. We are subject to it. And those who believe, who classify themselves as white, they are the smart folks in the room. When they start talking about race, shut the hell up and you start asking questions. You understand me? Get in question mode. Every time white folks start talking about race, we think that we need to be the leaders of the conversation, and then they'll patronize you and look at you like you got the answers. You're losing. You in the black club, you are subject to black classification. When I say you subject to black classification, Neely Fuller said it clear, plain as day. You didn't volunteer for no race. You are told that. You understand me? Who volunteers for a class that is to be mistreated? Nobody. Replace the system of racism, white supremacy with a system of justice. Like Gus T. Renegade to say. Today. It needs to be done today. All this progress talk is a waste of time. If people who classify themselves as white wanted to stop mistreatment based on color, systematic anti-blackness, racism, white supremacy, they could stop it tomorrow. But just be real about it. Counter racist thought, speech, and counter racist logic tells you Why would somebody stop something that they are benefiting from? They live in their best life. You understand me? Ain't nobody coming to save us. It's work to be done. That's why I spend my life energy trying to remove the confusion, because I grew up in a confused group. The confused group worldwide are subject to black classification. And that being said, this insane square dance that we do, this spineless, this evil that we have been subject to for the last 400 years, will have a person that may be born with light complexion for whatever reason, and they may have a dark brown, black classified mother or father, or dark brown, black classified family members. They will actually have to consider, or will be incentivized to consider, passing. What do I mean by passing? There's a term that is used for people who may have black family members or black people within their lineage, but they don't have the pigmentation or any evidence, visible evidence of that non-white genetic connection. They just go ahead and pass as white and live as a person that is classified as white. Now, all that is saying is the people who classify themselves as white in that environment accept them as white. And as they make the decision to pass, what you got to understand is that means you ain't going to see mama no more. And if mama do come to the house, hey, mama, you got to come through the back door. She can't come through often because it's going to be question raising. Why is she over here all the time? Is somebody special to you? You understand me? And if that white man or white woman is in a tragic arrangement with a person that's classified as white, you think that person that's classified as white want to see black granddaddy, black grandmama, black sister, black brother visiting the house all the time? Baby, if you're going to be with me, you're going to have to let all them niggers go. You're white now. You understand me? You're going to have to make that insane, that unfathomable decision. And that unfathomable decision has been made worldwide by people who are classified as non-white. It doesn't matter if you're in the Pacific. It doesn't matter if you are Asian. It doesn't matter if you're in Africa. It doesn't matter if you're in the Caribbean. It doesn't matter if you're in Central, South, North America, or Canada, or Alaska. The global system of racism, white supremacy is going to make you think about that decision, especially if you're light complected, which brings me to some of the clips that I played earlier. And I promise I won't be long. I'm going to be here a little bit longer, but I got to get this out. Everybody was up in arms when this woman by the name of Rachel Dolezal said, you know what? I identify as a black woman. And they acted like they never heard nothing like this before. I'm going to be honest with your family. I think that there are a lot of white people that predate Rachel Dolezal, that for their best interest claim non-white status. In particular, people who classify themselves or identify themselves as Native Americans. Last time I checked, Native Americans was classified as Negroes. Frederick Douglass had a white daddy and a Native American mama. I'm going to say it one more time because I don't think y'all understand this. Frederick Douglass had a white daddy and a Native American mama. Let's go to the Loving case. Loving versus Virginia. The black woman, I believe they had a movie. The black woman that was being sexually terrorized by this older pedophile. I believe she was about 14 years old and he was 18, 19, or 20. But they made a romantic movie about statutory rape. But that's neither here or there. This white man fought against, I believe, the state of Virginia to wed this non-white woman. Now, in the movie, you see a black woman. But do you know that that woman and her family identifies with being Native American? Not only that, they are Native Americans. But white folks say you're Negro, so you can call yourself whatever you want. The white supremacists do the classifying. Now, I know I sound crazy. Come on, JohnGHorse, didn't you promise not to have all these tangents? I feel like Ric Flair. What is all the fuss about when Rachel Dolezal is talking about she passing? You understand me? White folks do that all the time. So if we gonna get crunk over Rachel Dolezal, let's start talking about all these folks that superimpose themselves on non-white culture. Not gonna go into what I want to go in, but I just wanted to get that off my chest. And while I'm on the road, I played a clip of Oprah Winfrey, and I believe Barbara Walters asked her a straight up and down question, and Oprah Winfrey knew this question was coming, and she had an answer for Barbara Walters. Barbara Walters asked Oprah Winfrey, "Did you ever want to be white?" Now, where you gonna get that? Where do you get that question from? You understand me? I think that Oprah asked her to ask her that question, but that's me. I could be in error. But anyways, the white woman, Barbara Walters, asked Oprah back in 1990-something, I forget when it was, "Did you ever want to be white?" And Oprah Winfrey said, "Yeah, I did want to be white." Now, everybody jump in her throat, but when you under the context of racism and white supremacy, ain't that's gonna happen? You understand me? I also played a clip of Azure Savage, a 19-year-old author. She wrote a book about being a non-white student in the state of Seattle. I'm sorry for not having that title. You failed us. That was the title of that book. And Azure, and I hope I ain't wearing her name out, has a white mother and a non-white black classified father. She identifies herself as transgender, and she identifies as being of mixed race. And the question is, family, what is a mixed race? There's a famous saying where Neely Fuller would say that if a police officer is chasing an individual and they put over the radio scanners, he's a mixed gentleman running down the block. Who in the hell are you gonna chase? Give me specifics, and you will really begin to see what it is and how it works, because you can be mixed all you want to. He's a Negro. He's black running down the block. And everything else don't got to worry about that. So that's why when society try to use this little phrase, the black and brown community, and I did an episode on racial classification, confusion, and the black and brown illusion. You can look that up, family. Again, if you think this content is constructive, if you like what you're hearing, please press the thumbs up and subscribe button. But I did an episode on the racial classification, confusion, and the black and brown illusion. Anybody who uses that term has to understand this. Black and brown is one group of people. People who are brown are classified as black, and that is the black and brown community. White people that speak Spanish do not get targeted because they look no different than white people that speak English. I'll say it one more time, because I am here to remove confusion. White people that speak Spanish are not targeted, nor are they brown. People who are classified as black are brown and are subject to black classification by the white supremacists. That's the black and brown community. It's the same old group. Negroes. You understand me? I'm going to play a clip of Oprah Winfrey trying to explain to her white audience, make them feel good about her victim status of her victim status being subject to the system of racism and white supremacy. And these white folks, in particular, there's a couple of white women in the audience that acted confused. I am offended by the white women in the audience acting confused because they know better than Oprah Winfrey what the game is all about. They know better than Oprah Winfrey what the fuss is all about. They know the code. And the code is to dominate. It ain't about justice. It ain't about this word that they like to use, equal and fair. It's about domination. And once we understand what we playing with, what it is, and how it works, we can begin our quest, our duty to replace the system of racism and white supremacy with a system of justice. And without further ado, here is the clip of Oprah Winfrey on her show talking about passing, talking about her victim status, being subject to the system of racism and white supremacy. And you know how we do it here. Cue the clear.
Yes, ma'am, next to her.
Growing up, it was very evident to me. This is my mother. She's not going to like me for saying this, but she's very fair. And growing up as a very dark-skinned child, people would tell me, oh, your mother's so pretty. What happened to you? And it was constant. But the one thing I do like is that I have children, and they are browner, you know, about your complexion. And the fact that they can see someone like you, and they can aspire to be like that and know that that's all of a part of it.
Well, thank you. That's why I'm here. One of the reasons. But, you know, even when I was coming up, I think, let's see, when I was, you know, it's not even starting out, there was Jane, y'all remember Jane Kennedy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, part of the culture was that if you're Jane Kennedy and you got long hair, straight hair,
But for the
and
rest
you're
of us.
pretty, and I'm telling you, I know nobody wants to hear it now, but when I first came to Chicago, I got some of that. I got some of that from our own people. Like, well, what did you do to get this job? Because you don't have you don't have long hair and you ain't pretty. So, and you know, because nobody could understand
But
it.
you are pretty, but it takes.
And I'm gorgeous. I'm fat and gorgeous. But no, nobody had ever seen, you can imagine, I mean, this was just 15 years ago. Nobody had ever seen anybody like me on the air who was just an average looking black person, gorgeous though I am. But you know what I mean? No frills, no whatever. And I look back at some of my videotape, I don't know how I got to be successful myself, wearing some of those hairdos and those outfits. But you see what I'm saying? Because it was actually the first time nationally anybody of this skin color was on. It's true. And myself, yeah?
Matter more to women than it did to men. So in other words, men, it wasn't as important to. It's sort of an issue about women. We're judged more on our looks than we are on.
No,
what's up
no,
to
it was no.
Wasn't
that's
like
not
that.
true, no.
No, okay,
Same thing. Men and
to
women.
get opportunity, you had to.
About opportunity, and certainly the whole passing thing. That's a whole nother subject. The passing thing. But you know the thing about passing, for those who did pass, and Lita was saying this for her family, once you pass, the decision to pass means you've given up your whole entire family. You know, that you can never go back. Because you all understand that, right? Because if you're passing, you just can't have your black mother show up. You just cannot explain 4 black women in your kitchen all of a sudden. Well, you know, I experienced this early when I was shifted from one parent to the other, and I came to live in Milwaukee with my mother, who was rooming with a lady, and my mother has another daughter, so I have a half-sister who was light-skinned and younger than I, and they were allowed to stay inside the house, and I was forced to sleep outside in the hallway, because I was the brown-skinned person. And my mother did it just because otherwise we'd have no place to sleep. But the place was owned by a white, not white, but I thought she was white, Ms. Miller, who also passed and just didn't want the brown-skinned child in her house. It's just really racism passed on to ourselves. That's what it really is in a very strong way. And the issue of black men, you were asking a question about me. That is a completely different story. I don't even know how to begin, because the thing that I think we have never been able to get across in this country, and I've done hundreds of shows on it and just gave up trying to explain it, is that the reason why racism still exists and the reason why you have the breakdown in the family still today, the reason that the prisons are filled with, predominantly black men is because of what happened 100 years ago. Men were not allowed to be with their families, were not allowed to even stay and take care of their families, and because they felt so helpless and so hopeless, many of them just disappeared, so-called abandoned their families because of it. And that was just a part of the culture. You weren't even allowed to marry. You weren't even allowed to marry because you were considered property. And so at any given time, you can come back and he's gone. He is gone. Or I used to think of this all the time. You are a mother, you go to work in the fields. You go to work in the fields and you come back from work and your children are gone. Maybe one is gone, maybe two are gone. All of your children are gone, or your mother is gone, your family is gone. And at any given time in your life that can happen. That really, for me, was a lesson of Beloved. And I, have studied Black history, been a Black person all my life and all that. Very connected to the whole Black thing. But it really was the first time that I really got what the sorrow was. The deep, deep sorrow was no free will. It was no free will. And that is your right as a human being, is free will.
And there you have it. Oprah Winfrey, straight from the horse's mouth. And again, if you heard the verbiage and the lingo of that show, she basically did a show to try to explain to white people, to get them to understand the mindset of a victim. Let me tell you something. I'm going to say this, and this is my position. I could be in error. Feel free to leave comments if I'm talking crazy. Under the context of racism and white supremacy, white terror domination and/or systematic anti-blackness, when it comes to the topic of race, you're not teaching white folks nothing. They're dominating you if you are subject to non-white and/or black classification. You are designated loser. They kick you around like a can. You ever heard about that game, Kick the Can? Black classification, non-white classification is the can that's being kicked around by people who classify themselves as white, and we believe in racism, white supremacy. And always remember, keep learning and stay codified. Wait a minute, family, I did it wrong. First of all, I hope I have contributed to less confusion. And always remember, keep learning and stay codified.
Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. If you do not understand racism, which is white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Confuse you. Confuse you. Confuse you. Confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. If you do not understand, confuse you. Confuse you.
My definition of white supremacy and racism, I use those two terms as synonyms. I use the same definition for both terms. That definition is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white.
Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.